That's Wham! And Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. You're listening to BBC Radio Leicester. I'm Jonathan Lampon, and he is Lord Digby Jones. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you. And you know what? Thanks for breaking away. I was looking at your biography. You must be the busiest man that I think I've ever, met, really. I mean, you're
They always say, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy bloke. And I do film a day. That's
you do
for sure.
What have you been up to already today?
I got up about 5-ish, and I have a client I'm doing some work for in Singapore, so it was his afternoon. So I had a telephone conference with him. Then I went down to the local health club, which opens up.
I thought you were going to say pub. I was thinking, what a way to start the day.
I wish. That opens up at 6:30, so I went down there and I swim for half an hour. I'd reckon 5 days a week, probably, and I properly swim. I mean, crawl up and down, and I just have to avoid all these Japanese harpoonists. That's the only problem. I end up in a tub of lip balm by lunchtime.
But you obviously stay fairly fit. Is skiing one of your interests as well? You love skiing. And
I did the London Marathon in 2005, and I rode a bike from John O'Groats to Land's End 10 years ago.
And you obviously stay fit.
Yeah, well, I'm fat, but I'm fit. There's a big difference, actually, and I eat the right stuff. I just eat too much of it.
Yeah, but that's my problem.
It's I don't do silly stuff.
You're
with
on
food.
common ground. You're on welcome and common ground here.
I don't do too silly stuff with food. I just eat a lot of it, and so I did that, and then I came over to Hinckley, and I chair Triumph Motorcycles.
Yep,
fabulous business. I mean, we employ about 1,400 people there, and we turn over about 330 million quid a year.
It's a real success story, isn't it?
We make 50,000 bikes and sell them to 31 countries.
What are they doing right that
do you know something? If you read most national newspapers, it's we don't make things anymore.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask.
Ridiculous.
What are they doing right that other areas of the manufacturing sector aren't?
They are emblematic, actually, of what manufacturing in Britain succeeds today. It's got to be value added. In other words, not a commodity, not something which sells only on price. That's what Asia do very well. The Western world can only succeed if they sell on value added. In other words, it's something which is more than just cheap. Secondly, it's got to be innovative. In other words, it's got to have good ideas that you can make money out of. Innovation isn't invention. Invention is inventing something, thinking of something. Innovation is taking that idea to market, taking it and making money out of it. And then thirdly, brand. You've got to be able to sell a brand. You've got to have people thinking, I associate that word with good stuff. And then lastly, quality. If it falls apart, don't do it. And of course, a lot of British manufacturing 25, 30 years ago did fall apart. And so we at Triumph are very proud. We are up there, best-selling over 500cc. We don't make small bikes. These are big stuff. We're the best-selling bike in Britain at that level, and we're in the top 3 in America. We're in the top 3 in Europe, and it's all down to John Blaw. He bought it off the receiver 25 years ago. And has turned it into this amazing success story. And I tell you, it's lovely. I mean, this morning he said the same. I chair it, and he said, thanks for coming, Diggs. And I said, John, I learn more from you than you ever learn from me.
Is that your nickname, Diggs?
Yeah, everybody calls me Diggs. And I learned so much from him. And another job I do, I'm corporate ambassador at JCB.
Right.
And with Sir Anthony Bamford. And I learned the same thing there as I do from John Blaw, and that is that it's taking medium-term decisions. Don't take a decision, knee-jerk reaction, that frankly might do you well in a week and do you badly in 5 years. Similarly, over 5 years' time, the world, you can't forecast it. But taking decisions for the medium term, and there's something else about them. They're privately owned companies, you see. The Bamfords own JCB 100%, John Blaw owns Triumph 100%. So because they don't have to worry about the teenage scribblers in the analysts' offices in London, they don't have to worry about their share price and their dividend yield, they can take decisions about investing in good kit, training their people, investing in overseas markets. And that is just route one to success. And everybody goes and says, well, Germany makes stuff and exports it so well. Well, I'll tell you why, because that's the characteristics of what the Germans do. And so, I'm a corporate ambassador at Jaguar Cars, and that's just the same again. They make medium-term decisions, invest in good kit, and sell it around the world.
Looking around here then, looking around Leicester, of course, there was huge industry, the textile industry, absolutely massive. And then when that went, Do you think anything's really come in? I mean, we have big Leicestershire companies. You know, you mentioned Triumph. Yeah. Obviously, Next is a huge retailer as well. You know, there are big companies out there. You know, doing incredibly. Caterpillar, of course, another example. You know, but do you think that nothing's really replaced that kind of?
Depends what you mean by replaced, because you see, if what you mean by that, nothing has ever replaced a huge employer of unskilled people. The answer is you're right. By the way, that's not a Leicester issue. That's
so what's the solution?
Well, if you look at the shipyards of Newcastle, the South Yorkshire coalfield, the cotton mills of Manchester, the woolen mills of Leeds. If you look at, where I was born, stone's throw from Longbridge in Birmingham, you know, the men and women used to go and lie in the oil and go bang, 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 up in a mini every 30 seconds for 8 hours a day. If you look down on the Somerset flats of agriculture, you look down in the Cumbrand steelworks, all the same thing. Huge employers of unskilled people. There were quite a few skilled people in those industries, but at the top. And it was a big employer of people who were in work, because now that's all gone. That's all changed. And so today you've got highly successful businesses all over Leicester, loads of them. But if you haven't got a skill, by the way, I don't mean a PhD in rocket science. I don't mean go to university and get an upper second class degree in Norwegian aardvark sexing. I don't mean anything like that. You know. I mean.
Yeah, I tried to get on that course.
I know, that's right. People are dying to do it. But leave at 16, by all means, go and get an apprenticeship. Get a skill, get a ticket, get trained. And we need an education system that after 11 years of full-time, free, compulsory education in this country, half the kids don't get grade C or above in English maths. I was listening to your news just before you came on, and they were saying in Leicester they've got this big issue where not enough kids are getting 5 good GCSEs. Now, you see, that was always the same. I mean, it's not gone. People who listen to this and go, "Oh, it's got worse since when I was a lad." That's not true. It actually probably has got a bit better. The difference is there's nothing for them to do, because in the old days, you just mentioned it. You know, you had loads and loads of employers in Leicester who, if you were prepared to look in front of a machine for 8 hours a day, going boom, 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 there was a job for you. That's all gone. It's called Vietnam. It's called Cambodia. It's called China. It's called India. That's where it's gone. But if you are got a skill, you don't really do not need, lots and lots of degrees. If you've got a skill, there's work for you in Leicester. What
skills are people missing then? Because I keep on hearing this, and I read again, there was an article in the Daily Mail today, universities, having trouble with the students that are coming to them. They're not well equipped, they don't have any life skills, they don't have any, nous or whatever.
You see,
so what do they need?
Well, if you go to colleges of education... further education, taking in at 16 odd, and going to try and link in with a local employer, do an apprenticeship. Now, no principal of a college of education will go on radio and say this, because it's politically incorrect and their job depends on it. But I'll tell you, which is that they're spending September to Christmas with a lot of them in remedial education, teaching them to read. Because you can't go and teach them how to be an electrician until you've taught them how to read. Now, in the 5th biggest economy on earth, in Asia's century, at a time when we will win through, if we actually can sell goods and services around the world that are value-added, innovative, quality, brand, that is an obscenity. It's an obscenity that 20% of the adult population in this country can't read to the standard of an 11-year-old. Now, it didn't matter 50 years ago, because you stuck them in a factory down the road here, and they work 50 hours a week. It's in front of a machine. Matters today, because the employers of Leicester will go, "I'll have you, but I need you to have a skill." A college is sitting there saying, "I'll skill you," but the first thing they've got to do is teach them to read. And by the way, where it's also important, anybody listening to this who's in the public sector, it's not just a private sector issue, because in the public sector, I don't care whether you're in California or Germany, whether you're in Sweden or Spain, everybody's going to say to the public sectors of these countries, "I want you to give me more, and I'm going to give you less money to do it." Now, that means that it's no good saying to the public sector, "Work harder." What you've got to say is work more cleverly. That means invest taxpayers' money in better kit, and then train the people to use it better, and be prepared to be more flexible and change, and just deal with all the things that you're prepared to do if you feel equipped to do it, and you're not prepared to do if you're going, "Oh, I'm not skilled to do this." And therefore, in the public sector, we need more and better skilled people. And you stop a small business out at Foss Park, sit down and say, "What's your biggest challenge?" And when you really look at the business, you know what it is? They can't get enough skilled people. And Leicester's challenge is to say, how do we get kids to read, write and count in school? And then how do we get them to get an apprenticeship? And when you live in a country, as we do, where this year there are 450,000 apprenticeship starts, and there's only 470,000 university graduate starts. So by next year, there's going to be more apprenticeships than there are undergraduates, which is a good thing, because it means people are actually saying a university degree is not a be-all and end-all. They're important, I like it, but they're not be-all and end-all. What we now got to do is say, for half, you see, there's 1.3 million kids in the young people under 25, not kids, young people under 25. There's 1.3 million out of work.
Yeah.
Half of them are unemployable. Half of them, it's an absolute tragedy. We can't get enough economic activity in the nation to get them into work. But half of them, a small business, say, I can't take you on, mate, you can't read. I can't take you on. You think the pleasure of earning a living is entirely mine. You know, they turn up to work at 9 o'clock, turn up to work at all. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that's half of them. So the challenge for Leicester is, how do you get the young people into a mindset of wanting to train themselves and skill themselves?
Let's come to your life, and you start out in a biography of your life. You talk fondly about the corner shop.
Yeah,
this is back in just outside of Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of your earliest memories, it says of life in the busy corner shop where you lived with your mother and father and older sister. The shop, you say, was within a spanner throw of the Austin plant down there at Longbridge.
Yeah.
You remember fondly pressing your nose against the shop window, watching the new minis leave the factory, destined for showrooms across the UK and throughout the world as well. You came into business, I mean, we were talking about this before we came on air, incredibly young, but this vision that I have, was it a bit like Arkwright's shop in open all hours?
Yeah, well, it was open all the time, and Mum and Dad were priest substitutes, weren't they? I mean, you know, the men and women who worked up the road at the Austin would come in, and they'd have a moan about the other one, or they'd or give us a box of chocolates because I've forgotten her birthday, or it would be, you know, how did the villa do on Saturday, and all of that sort of stuff. And I learned, and I watched Mum and Dad in action, and I learned that, you know, a guy had come in for a packet of cigarettes, but by the time he'd had a little chat and everything else, he'd look up and say, oh, you better give me a box of dairy milk. So Dad had made a bigger sale. Why? By talking to them and having a good customer care relationship. I learned about the fact, and I put in the book, you know, I can remember helping, and I helped them to some potatoes, and I weighed them, and it was just under I can't remember now, but shall we say £1? It was just under. So I threw in an extra potato, which took it over, but of course I charged her for £1, didn't I? Yeah. So when she went out, Dad said, you've just thrown my profit away. And I, of course, I'm 7 years old, and I said, what's profit? And he sat me down and he explained how that extra potato was the difference between selling this at cost and making some money. And he said, and if you don't make the money, I can't pay the shop assistant, and I can't pay the mortgage and everything else. And he explained me about profit. And then you'd learn about how if he had to judge as to how many Easter eggs he'd sell, because you weren't going to sell an Easter egg on Easter Monday, were you? No. So, you know, if you got it wrong...
These were the days before they started appearing back in June as well.
Yeah. And if you got it wrong, he was stuck with a load of stock he paid for and couldn't sell. And if he got it right, he made a few bob. And I was 7 and 8 years old. And down the road, the Austin just launched the Mini, 1960. And I can remember them. And they were green and blue and red. And they used to come past the shop, either on transporters or on their own with delivery plates. And if you saw them coming down, because you hear them coming down, and you'd run and look at them, because this was a Mini. I mean, this was so unusual. And no one in the street had a car. No one owned a car, weren't rich enough. And Mum and Dad, I always say, they gave me love and enthusiasm and no money. And I can remember Dad was the first guy on the street to have a car. 512 HAB, a green Mini. Remember it ever so.
Do you need to have, money to succeed? Because everyone nowadays says, you need money, you need to be able to have, the good financial backing in order to start up, in order to be successful.
That's not true. I mean, I'm very, very lucky, because I had a mum and dad who cared, and they were enthusiastic. They gave me love, they gave me enthusiasm. We were not, we weren't even, we hadn't even got a few bob in the bank. I mean, we weren't poor. And always wore a school uniform and everything else. I had a week's holiday a year down in Devon. No, we didn't have any money. But I had the ingredients of a fabulous start, which was that. Secondly, I had a good education. And I loved school. And Dad used to test me on stuff. And I can remember once coming back for the school holidays, and it was July, 6 weeks off. And on that first day, I can remember him saying, right, there's your bike. I was 8 years old. And I would like the library's down the road, and I would like a detailed essay and diagrams of the canal system of Birmingham, please. I was 8 years old. Now get out there, go and draw it, tell us about the bridges and the locks and everything else, and you can come and tell me how you're getting on every night. And so I did. And it was that, so I can remember once I was in a class for 13-year-olds when I was 11, and I came second. And I came home and I'd come second, and I was 2 years younger than anybody else in the class, and all he said was, what happened to first? And years later, he died 10 years ago, but years later, he said, have I ever done anything that really annoyed me? And I said, yeah, and I told him that story. He said, what'd you do next term, son? I said, I came first. He said, exactly. And that, I was brought up to believe I could always go home, I could always tell him where I didn't understand, I could ask him why, and they would drive me, and they made it fun.
Are those family values lost today?
Not everywhere. I mean, I think, for instance, I think Indian families can teach us a hell of a lot about good education in the family. I think they're an exemplar. I mean, you get bad ones, of course you do.
Yeah.
But I think they're an exemplar about it. And I think it's nothing to do with money. It's to do with an attitude. And then secondly, I say this, there is no substitute for sheer hard work. And I tell them this down at the Tigers. You know, I talk to kids all over the country, and I say, if you look at somebody like, pick one, Toby Flood, kicking goals. Right? If you think he just turns up and does it, this bloke's out in the pouring rain on a Friday afternoon, smacking another 250 through the posts. You look at Wayne Rooney doing these wonderful vault kicks and stuff. Yeah. That kid's out there in the pouring rain, doing it. We're cold and everything else, and everybody isn't. There is no substitute for sheer hard work. I do a lot of public speaking, and people say, oh, you stand up, you don't use notes, you can talk for 40 minutes. The night before, I was sitting down thinking, now, what am I going to say? I'm prepping myself on who, what, and where. I'm learning names and figures and things which I'm going to use in the speech. It looks as if I've just got up and thought, oh, what am I going to talk about today? But I've prepared, and I try to get young people to understand, if you don't, there is not a free lunch in life, and it's nothing to do with money, it's to do with attitude. And then I think the other couple of things you need a bit of confidence and a feeling that you can get on. And secondly, you can't wing it. If you don't know your subject, you will be found out. Because I always say China will have your lunch and India will have your dinner. So.
but very true, you know, isn't it? There's a big piece in your biography talking about school, and I mean, looking at this was at Bromsgrove School, a public school for boys.
I got a foundation scholarship when I was 10. I said to them, "What's a scholarship?" I didn't even know, and they said, "You take this exam, and if you get it and you pass this interview, they pay your fees." So I did.
But you went all the way through. You played rugby and hockey for the school.
Yeah.
You ultimately then became head boy.
Yeah.
You know, this was you worked incredibly. I mean, was there ever a part of you that was rebellious? Because so far, so good.
Yeah.
Well, I know of one area.
Yes, you're smiling. If only this was visual radio. Well, I'm glad it wasn't, because people say I've got a good face for radio. You're smiling because you know what...
I know what's
If you were a lawyer, you would call this a leading question.
Well, yes, I suppose so.
Well, when I was... I wasn't someone at school who got into trouble. I mean, I didn't go and...
Were you quite cool, though?
Yeah, I wasn't known as a swat.
Right, because that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also there's this theory, and I've heard this from parents before as well, that somehow if the kid does well, that's like, it's a bit...
Learning isn't cool.
Yeah, learning isn't cool. It's a bit naff. It's a bit,
I think it had to link in with the sport. You see, kids, if you're quite good at sport, kids will put up with you being quite good at school.
Right.
I think, and by the way, I'm not saying that's fair.
No.
I'm merely saying that's
just the way it is.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I had to work hard at my sport. I wasn't naturally gifted at sport. So I worked hard at it, ever so hard at it. But I got into the team, and then did all that stuff. And so I became head boy, and I've got into trouble. I've been caned a few times for various things, and like all kids are, you know. But I mean, I wasn't sort of someone who was always in trouble or anything. And for instance, I've never touched a cigarette. Still haven't to today. I'm 56 years old, and I've never put a cigarette to my lips. And so when they were all having a fag around the back of the bike sheds when they were 14, 15, I wasn't. And I couldn't see the point of... what did Bob Newhart say about Walter Riley in the phone call? And don't tell me, Walt, you stick it in your ear. You don't. You put it in your mouth, Walt, I see. And then you do what, Walt? You set fire to it, I see. Yeah. Well, part of that...
I love Bob Newhart. I love the driving instructor one. The driving instructor is just absolutely fabulous.
It's lovely. And we won the hockey cup. I was the captain. We mugged them. We shouldn't have won it. We were the second best team, but we won 1-0 because they were complacent. Got back in the changing room, and I said... You know what I'm going to do? I think we'll streak. Come on, who's streaking around there? And I was head boy and captain of the team at the time, and no one came with me, and I thought, I'm going. So, just in my hockey boots and socks, off once round the quad, and I wasn't on the public highway or anything, but I did come back, came in, thought no more about it, actually.
I thought you got away with it.
Yeah, and went into the dining hall, and they all cheered and everything else, all a bit of a laugh. And about an hour later, I was asked to see the headmaster. Well, that wasn't unusual, because I was head boy. So why wouldn't you go to see the headmaster? I walked in, and there was Dad sitting in reception. I said, Mum, is Mum all right? He said, yeah, I've come to take you home, son. I said, take me home? What for? And he said, you're being expelled. What for? Streaking. And the headmaster threw me out. And I'd had no history of it. I mean, it wasn't like the last straw.
Where were you in your
anything.
studies when this happened?
I'd done my A-levels. Just done my A-levels. I was all right.
You were all right.
I was all right, yeah. And the lovely aside, I then joined the Royal Navy because I got a place to read law at University College London, but they wouldn't give you a grant to go and study in London in those days because it was too expensive, you see. And so Dad said, I can't afford to send you. And so I clipped the coupon in the paper and sat some exams and an interview and whatever, and got a cadetship through the Royal Navy. So they paid for you to go to university. In return, you gave them return of service. Yeah. And a wonderful 3 years, 1974 to 77, and learned a hell of a lot. Learned a lot about myself, actually.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was a big fish in a small pool at school, and suddenly I became a very, very small minnow in a very big ocean.
But when I've done that, when I've moved on in jobs, and you go somewhere and, you get to a stage where you feel you're at a ceiling height and maybe you want to move on.
Surely.
And then you do it, and then you think, oh, crikey, I don't know anyone around here, and it's all a bit daunting. And then gradually, you kind of build up. I always used to love at school going up through the years of school, because maybe some of the bullies, maybe some of the older kids that you didn't really get on with, all of a sudden they'd gone.
Yeah.
And this was your chance.
And also they got found out.
And they got found out.
They've had, by which I mean, I don't mean teachers found. I mean their lack of ability found them out.
No, exactly.
And so I joined the Royal Navy, and I did think I was on a ship called HMS Fearless. And I did think I really ought to tell the captain that I'd been expelled, because the person who was given this commission wasn't the person who was here now. If I'd put on an interview application, I'd been expelled, might have been a tad different, you see. So I thought I'd better do this. So I waited for captain's table, and I went in and march up. Hats off! Hats off. He stood there to attention. At ease. Yes. What? Sorry? Well, what do you want? I went, I've got something to tell you, sir, about the change in my circumstances since what about? And I said, well, I've been expelled from school, sir. Remember, I'm about 17, right? Yeah. I've been expelled from school, sir. Expelled? What for? Drugs? I said, good God, no. He said, nothing sexual. I said, oh, no.
Not quite.
He said, what then? I said, well, I'm a street, sir. Street? We do that all the time here. Next. and of course, to me, suddenly, I'd been so... eaten up with worry about this, because it was a big institution, the school, but I was big in it. Suddenly, in this enormous thing called the Royal Navy, I was tiddly-squat, and it mattered not at all. And it was a good lesson in hey, get this in perspective. Just put yourself sometimes in perspective. You're not quite the class act you thought you were.
Well, keep your clothes on. You've got another half hour yet. Lord Digby Jones, my special guest, joining me in the studio this afternoon. More from him in a moment's time, but it's just after 2:30.
BBC Radio Leicester. Jo Bostock has the latest news.
Good afternoon. A serious case review has found that a teacher was able to film himself abusing young girls in his classroom because of lamentable failures in the school management. Nigel Leet was jailed indefinitely last year for abusing children at Hillside First School in Weston-super-Mare, where he'd taught for 15 years. BBC Radio Leicester has learnt that small businesses in the city that are seeking compensation for damage that happened during last summer's disturbances will not receive a payout. Leicestershire Police Authority said back in December that firms are ineligible for compensation as the trouble which hit our streets in August can't be classed as a full-scale riot. It's thought 90% of hate crime in Leicestershire is going unreported. The figure's been revealed by Leicestershire County Council as it begins a new drive to highlight the problem. The weather is going to be a cold and breezy night with a touch of frost in places. Overnight lows of 2 Celsius, that's 36 Fahrenheit. A bright but cold start to the day tomorrow. It's going to be breezy with a few wintry showers blowing in through the afternoon. Top temperatures tomorrow, 6 Celsius, that's 43 Fahrenheit. BBC Radio Leicester News.
Travel news for Leicestershire.
BBC Radio Leicester.
The motorways are doing well this afternoon. Can't see any delays on the stretch of the M1 or on the M69. The bottom end of the M6 also pretty clear towards the Catthorpe interchange where it meets the M1. Can't see any problems either around the city. We have got Lancaster Road closed though between De Montfort Street and the Ring Road. That's all due to the district heating works, which mean that we've also got lane restrictions on London Road around its junction with University Road. There's also a couple of short delays on the trains at the moment. That's after some earlier signalling problems between Leicester and Market Harbour, but the majority of services all back on time now. Live from Area Traffic Control in Leicester, I'm Sally Hurst.
Every weekday morning from 6, you can rely on us to keep you up to date.
Something that will bring Leicester within 55 minutes of London will have an enormous economic benefit.
To bring you news of the best events going on right here on your doorstep.
But it's to show the company, whether at the Haymarket or Curve, has never done before, and it's the spectacular Hello Dolly.
And to celebrate all that's great about where you live.
I went to meet the man who makes Sven's suits.
Sven, obviously, after moving to the manager's post in Leicester, was introduced to me by a mutual client.
Ben Jackson, back tomorrow from 6. Only on BBC Radio Leicester.
So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Now, Digby Jones, Lord Digby Jones, Diggs to his friends.
Or Fat Git, but usually Diggs.
Is in the studio with me this afternoon. Much more from him. I've had sort of words in my ears. People have been asking me about this all day as a question to ask you, because we're going to come on to talking about Leicester in a minute, and also your association with Tigers. Right, let's get this one done and dusted. Are you going to go for Mayor of Birmingham?
Oh, what a surprise. I thought you might ask me that. There are 3 questions I want answered, and by the way, I think there's some relevance of this to mayors of anywhere else. The first is, cut through all the PR of this, what is the power that person's going to have? If they don't run 3 things and have responsibility and ability to change these things, then the answer is I won't. And that is, firstly, the police. Completely.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly is transport. Completely. Yep. And thirdly is education. Completely. And if those 3 things are not in the gift is the wrong word, but the executive power of the mayor, then you're going to have all the responsibility and none of the power.
And it's the same 3 things that, of course, the London mayor has, and you know, with all respect to our own mayor here in Leicester, Birmingham is meant to be, you know, out of London,
of course,
the prize.
And I think those are the first one. The second of the 3 is that Birmingham of its own, unlike, you see, Boris Johnson is mayor of London, but they define London as this enormous Greater London area.
Yeah, it's the metropolis.
So although people do commute from Solihull and Hampshire, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the bulk of the City of London's commuters live in London, but they live a long, long way out.
Of course they do, yeah.
Now, if they're going to say just the mayor of Birmingham, what about Wolverhampton? What about Coventry?
Yeah.
And when you think Tata, the Indian company that own Jaguar Land Rover, they're building an engine plant with 1,000 jobs in Wolverhampton. They're just recruiting another 1,500 people in Lode Lane, Solihull for Range Rover. And they have a design studio and R&D place in Canley and Coventry. Right. Not one of those places is anything to do with the Birmingham that a mayor will stand for. Yet, if the mayor of Birmingham was on a come and invest in my city bit in Mumbai, talking to Tata would say, I invest in Birmingham. What do you mean? Well, I've got this engine plant and I've got Solihull and I've got... Because what the world sees Birmingham as isn't what the voter will see Birmingham as.
Yes.
So I'm saying you want a mayor of the West Midlands, and if you don't have a mayor of the West Midlands, don't bother. And the third thing is I want to see businesses having a vote. They pay tax, businesses do, and I think they pay council tax. And I think that a council taxpayer should have a vote. I don't mind if people who live there and don't pay council tax don't. I want them to have a vote. It's not a poll tax issue. I mean, I want everybody who lives in the area can have a vote, regardless of whether they pay tax or not. But a business should be able to pay tax, should be able to have a vote if they pay tax. And the reason is because a load of people say to me, I'll vote for you. I think you're great. I said, bit of a problem. He said, what's that? I said, you don't live there, mate. I work there. My office is in New Hall Street. Yes, but you don't live there. And so I'm not so sure that my talent could be used in the job in a way that would make a difference unless they actually get the job right.
If they got that job right...
Yeah, would I then do it?
Would you then do it?
I'd talk to 3 different groups of people. One would be... You see, I'll make a lousy politician because I'll tell you the truth. One would be the ethnic community. And I'd say... Because it's big in Birmingham. And I'd say, I just want to know, do you really mean it that you're on the page of an internationalised Birmingham? Because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
2, I would talk to the unemployed of Birmingham and say, look, you know, I represent business. Everybody knows that. So, are you up for this? Before I put my hat in the ring, are you up for this? Because it's no good me doing this and then you campaigning for 6 weeks about this fat cat wanting to be in charge. And then the third thing is I'd ask the most important person of all this, I'd ask the missus. And Pat's been so supportive throughout, she's my rock really, throughout me being at the CBI and me being in government. If she said go for it, then on that condition I would. If she said, love, I've had enough and I want to see more of you, and I'll tell you the absolute truth, I wouldn't. And so that's where we are. Do I care for it enormously? Would I want to make a difference? Yes. But I've never belonged to a political party and I never will. And I believe that...
Has that been important in your business life, not to be associated with any particular party?
Because business gets on with any political party if they're in power, because that's what democracy is. My trouble with local politics and local government and local politics is it's so tribal. You know, at the end of the day, someone listening to this in Leicester, within reason, don't give a damn, frankly, whether it's a Tory or Liberal or Labour. What they care about, do the buses come on time?
Yep.
Are they safe on their streets? Can their house be secure? And does the hospital work? I mean, those are the things they're into. They don't care that it's a Tory or a Labour or Liberal that deliver it. and I think local politics and the political ideology of tribalism have no place. Now, there's loads and loads of people listening to this who'll go, you know, they won't actually look in the mirror and say so, but they'll always vote Labour, or they'll always vote Tory. Well, it's wrong. They should be actually voting for who's going to deliver the city that works. So I have some pretty firm views about that. So the honest answer to you is I don't know.
That's fair enough. Let's talk Tigers.
Yeah. Well,
because you tell us, because it's a lovely story about the first time that you became associated with.
Yeah.
Tigers,
Well, firstly, my mum was born in Broughton Astley.
Yeah.
My auntie Jo, that's she's my godmother as well. Actually, she lives in Rothley still today. And a lot of childhood memories was being put in the back of the car, and my sister and I, and being driven over to Broughton Astley to see Auntie Sally, who's Joe's mum, who died at 104, would you believe, and Auntie Kay, who died at 100. And I'm not slipping this mortal coil just yet. And so Leicester connection for me is quite strong, well, very strong. And I can remember Grandad taking me to Welford Road when I was about 8. And I remember watching, it was a representative game, it was like the Eastern Counties or something like that.
Yeah.
They wore red, I know that. And then move on, I was a lawyer. I was a lawyer at Edge & Allison in Birmingham, and in 1989 we bought a little firm in Leicester called Staunton Townsend. And Hugh Staunton and Nick Townsend have built a good practice, little one, compared with us, and we changed its name to Edge & Allison, and they ran it, and it was really good. And I came over a lot and helped build and grow it, and got to know quite a few East Midlands businessmen through that. John Bloor, David Wilson, Peter Tom,
right?
David Jones at Next. Got to know them all because the law firm started acting for them, or was already. And I started acting for Barden, the quarry company.
Yeah.
Met Peter. Peter, of course, had the job, chairman of Tigers. The game professionalises in 94, 95, and he said, he obviously was blind with a big heart, because he said I was quite good at what I did. And he said, would you like to act for us professionalising the game? So when Tigers, with this enormous fan base, members of the club and all that, became shareholders and professionalised, I did all the work. I actually did the legal work, did the contracts. Bob Dwyer was the coach. Dino was the captain, and I did all that. And then, of course, stayed involved. It bit me a bit, and I sort of came on, not every Saturday by a mile, but quite often.
But you do come up often, because
that was then.
Yeah.
And then I left government, and Peter said, would you like to come on the board as an on-exec? And I said, you stop me, you know, I'm there. And I bought shares, and I did my bit. And I'm here, I would say 80% of all the games I come to.
Yeah.
And I go away. I'm going to Exeter, I'm going to Saracens. I go away as well. The great thing about it, unlike any other club in the Northern Hemisphere, and this is not to say that Northampton and Saracens and Harlequins aren't good clubs. They're great clubs, and, you know, they've got great players, and they're very good. But the one thing that none of them have got is, come rain or shine, regardless of the opposition, 20 to 24,000 people of a Saturday go into Welford Road to watch rugby. It's the most successfully attended club in the whole of the Northern Hemisphere. For a big game, Harlequins against Saracens at Twickenham, they can put 80,000 in. Toulouse can fill it for a big game in France. But regularly, I mean, you know, not so good opposition in a match that doesn't matter so much. Those are the ones where people don't turn up in other places. They still come for Tigers. And it is...
Does it go back to Tigers? Cause,
a wonderful club.
You know, when you talk about it being...
Notice I said club, not business.
Well, that's really interesting, because business, when you talk about... You mentioned several things earlier on at the start of this interview. Brand being a big one. It's a huge brand, isn't it?
Quality.
Customer loyalty. Quality.
Yeah. It's all the things about business. And what's more, in a professional game, we've got to be able to afford to buy the best players and pay for the best players, and we've got to afford to be able to do it all properly. Well, so we have to run it as a business. But I'll tell you one thing about it, which, and I say this often, and I'll say it now because I believe it passionately. The director's job at that club is actually to leave it in better shape than they found it. We are trustees of something incredibly special. I know that legally I'm a director, and we have the playing side, and then we have the entertainment side and the business side, and all. I know all that. And one of the reasons I'm on board is I know what I'm talking about with a balance sheet. So that's one reason. But I am so aware that what Peter Tom and his directors know is when it's our time to go, it'll be in better shape than we found it. Now, I think 135 years ago, that's what they decided to do in Leicester, and I can assure anybody who's got Leicester Tigers in their heart that the same spirit pertains today.
Is the salary cap a bit of a sticking point, though?
Don't swear at me.
I mean,
it does seem really annoys me.
It's hampering the Tigers in Europe, isn't it?
Well, what really... It's hampering English clubs in Europe. I mean, what really annoys me is you saw Northampton play Leinster in the final of the Heineken, and at half-time, Northampton were hugely ahead, and they lost. And the reason was they were tired out. And the reason they were tired out, they hadn't got quality on the bench. Why? Because they couldn't buy quality on the bench. Why not? Because of a salary cap. Leinster had no salary cap because Ireland doesn't have a salary cap. France has a salary cap, but it's basically observed in its breach. Wales don't have a salary cap. And then it has to be said that, you know, I'm not going to mention any names on this because there's probably a libel lawyer sitting over there, but there's a club or two in England that probably, shall we say, pay their players in different sorts of ways and
get around
it. Now, at the end of the day, what do? You've got a salary cap of 4 million for salaries. If you could pay every one player 4 million or loads of players threaten seats, you know, it's up to you how you do it. But when you go and say a player's out of contract, try and entice him to come to us, we can't pay him more than X because of the salary cap. But you suddenly find that he's gone to Clermont-Ferrand in France, or he's gone to Ulster.
So would the board like to see it being scrapped?
You know, the guy who kicked all those goals against us in Ulster the other night, and we played very badly, so it's no excuse for the night. I mean, we deserve the kicking we got, and that's the other thing about Leicester Tigers, the most honest club you'll ever find with each other. We really do, in a board and in the dressing room. We're honest with each other, and that's very important.
Lewis Moody was a guest of mine not that long ago, and he was telling me exactly that. You never said anything, nothing ever said behind your back, because it was always said in front.
And in the board, I can promise you this: we are very honest with each other, and it's very important. But at Ulster, that's Fly Half who kicked all their goals and did it well. You know, he was South African.
Do you think
he cost them a fortune? But he's allowed to do it.
Do you think this salary gap will cause a breakaway like Leicester and Northampton?
I think if Saracens,
like a European
Saracens
league,
are owned by the Rupert family from South Africa. They've got lots and lots of money, and they intend to do a Manchester City. You can see it a mile off. I don't know any more than you about Saracen, but you can see it a mile off. It's a bit like we're Manchester United, well supported, big brand, indigenous support keeping us going, and Saracens are like Manchester City, big money coming from overseas, buying up the players. And if you think about it, Man United have seen off Arsenal, Chelsea and Man City in their time and all that stuff. Tigers are a bit like that with Bath and Wasps and now Saracens. Now, at the end of the day, how far will the Rupert family take it before they say, this isn't they might do a packer, they might say, we're not playing this game anymore, this is ridiculous. Harlequins are doing really well. Northampton are a cracking team. And us. Now, there'll come a day when we'll say to TV or to somebody, we've got to change the way we do this.
Is that going to be like a European?
Well, the only
European
problem with that is, and if I was, to be fair, if I was Cecil Duckworth at Worcester, or I was Brian Kennedy at Sale, I would say, by the way, you do need people to play against, and you do like winning. And if you didn't have us, you would be no one to play against and you wouldn't win. And they've got a point. And therefore, one of the reasons I don't think Man United and Arsenal and whatever have ever gone off to play Bayern Munich and Real Madrid every weekend is because they all like winning. And they wouldn't win all the time, would they, if it was that case? So I think there's more to this than meets the eye. The key to this is television rugby, because that's where the money is. And what I do think is unfair, and I think will change almost very soon, they move. And anybody listening to this who comes to the Tigers, I know one thing they'll want to ask me. Can you tell me why... on the 31st of March, it's a Saturday, and we were going to play, or whatever it is, we're going to play Worcester at home. And an email came out 2 days ago, they've moved it to Friday night. And I'm out on Friday night, and I can't come anymore. Now, what are you going to do about that, Digby? Well, I'll tell you what you can do about that. I can't go either, because I'm doing something else on Friday night.
What you do about it.
Sky say...
I've got the answer for you.
But Sky say, we have the right to move it to Friday night because we pay you a lot of money. And I would say, that's fine as long as we saw the money. But in Wales, or France, or Ireland, the money goes to the club that's inconvenienced.
Yeah.
In England, it's split 12 ways. So we move from Saturday to Friday night, our gate goes down, for all the reasons just described, and Worcester and Newcastle and Sale get a 12th each of the money. We get a 12th. Similarly, we actually can put 24,000 in and still have it televised live, and we only get a 12th of the money. And Sale can put in 3,000 and they get a 12th of the money. Now that has to change, and I think that will change quite quickly.
In the meantime, though, you'll be able to listen to it on the radio.
Yes,
with us.
Exactly.
And I'll give you an online... Are we going to be online as well? I think we are. Yeah, we are. We will be online, so I'll give you our online site as well.
I'll do that, actually. I know where I am. It'd be quite nice to have a little earpiece and be able to give them a running commentary.
All right. Well, on 104.9 FM, you'll be able to tune in. Just one last thing on Tigers, and then I want to come to other aspects as well. 2015 World Cup, expansion of the Welford Road site as well. That's got to be on the cards, hasn't it?
Well, we are, as you know. I mean, the Caterpillar stand is fabulous. We've got
further
we've got the biggest shirt sponsorship in Club Rugby with Caterpillar. It's a great relationship. They're a great business, and they're a local employer, of course, at Desford. I mean, they employ a lot of people, and that's good news. Manufacturing too. The stand, we had 16,400 capacity. We took this big belief in the Leicester public would actually come, and we borrowed the money and put up the stand. We now have an average gate of 21,000, capacity 24,000. So on average 21. So there are 5,000 people who never used to come. Now, we've got to get the 21 to 24, and when it's at 24, and people are back to where it was at 16 going, can't get a ticket, then you haven't got to be a rocket scientist looking and say, well, what do you do next? And it has to be the other side, doesn't it? Now, I'm not hiding from you. If I say to you, there's nothing been signed, and there's no plan been agreed, and that's the truth. So it's not me going on here and clouding the issue. But I can tell you now, the board, the moment we get to regular 24,000 and we think, right, well, we got it from 16 to 24. Now what we want to do is get it 24 to 28, say.
Yep.
Then we definitely would look at developing that, for sure. Because why wouldn't we? It's because Tigers is so important. It's important to so many different sectors of our community.
But do you think it would be a site fit for 2015?
I don't know,
World
actually.
Cup.
No, good point. Don't know. We are going to be one of the grounds, regardless. You're going to have World Cup rugby at Welford Road.
You are?
Oh, definitely. that is definitely happening. I mean, by the way, that's public knowledge. I mean, it's out there. You will have World Cup rugby at Welford Road. What World Cup rugby, I don't know, and I don't know. I don't think the ground would be changed by then, but I truly don't know, actually. I mean, if everyone listening to this suddenly thought, right, I'll go on Saturday and get these gates up to 20 more, we probably found done more quickly than
there's coaches being arranged.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I would rather at this moment like to, if there was a few bob around, which there isn't, but if there was a few bob around, I'd like to strengthen Richard's Cockerell's squad before I built a stand, to be honest. But well, I just think it's fair.
Yeah,
because
fair point.
They go up against Sarries and they go up against Toulouse and everything else, and I think it would be quite good to see. One thing you do get from being on the board, and I am lucky to do it because you don't get paid for it. I mean, I always say it's the least remunerative and most enjoyable thing I do, and other than having the mickey taken out of me all the time for being a peer, which they always every day.
I was going to say, how does that lord sit with you?
Tigers. Yeah. They to say they tease me is an understatement, but I love it actually. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a great leveler. They bring your feet right back onto the deck. It's like a returning England player when they've. Ben Young scored that marvellous try for England against Australia in the summer, do you remember?
Yeah.
And down under, and when he came out first day's training, I mean, they mercilessly teased him. Well, similarly, you're not, once you come to Tigers, boardroom or dressing room, once you come to Tigers, you know better and you know worse than anybody else, and it's for you to prove you're better, not your reputation. And I like that. It challenges me, and I like that.
Something else that you challenge as well, and, I really mean this. You're an incredibly nice guy.
Oh, you're very kind.
Are you ever nasty?
I don't lose my temper. I can't remember. I don't lose my temper.
Can you be nice and succeed in business, then?
Oh, yeah. I've got a little phrase, actually. You don't have to be... I actually use the word, but you don't have to be an SH1T to be good. I don't believe you do. I actually think if you treat other people like you want to be treated... By the way, I fail at this. I'm not perfect by any means, and I have to work hard at it. If you actually use please and thank you, if you say you're sorry and you mean it, you'll be amazed how people actually will work with you. Because people like working with people who are nice. I think also... it doesn't mean you're weak, and it doesn't mean you're not tough, and it doesn't mean you don't give bad news.
Yeah.
You see, people actually don't like bad news, but they prefer it to no news. Being kept in the dark and not knowing is far worse than knowing where you stand and being helped to do something about it. And there's something else I've always subscribed to. It's very... I won't use the word, but it's very difficult to give a telling off, if you know what I mean.
Beginning with B,
Beginning with B, yes, with an ing on the end. It's very difficult to give a telling off to someone who's cheerful. If you walk into a room and it's morning, hi, how can I help you? Very difficult to get across. If you walk into a room, hello, and nice day today, it's going to rain later. Very easy to tell them off. Very easy to get across with them. Am I ever... nasty? No. But I tell you where I fail. I can be sarcastic. I'm blessed with a wit.
Yes.
And I'm blessed with a good vocabulary. And I can turn it. I can be verbally quite sharp and sarcastic. And I know I can. And Pat says to me, that wasn't very nice. And I say, oh, come on, that was... And she says, yes, but that person didn't think so. And it's a good lesson in... and how can I put this? It's a good lesson in treating people how you'd like to be treated. Now, it's no good saying, well, I don't mind if they're like that to me, because I'm a big boy and I can answer back.
Yeah.
What I forget is some people aren't like that. Some people haven't got that equipment, and I shouldn't abuse that. And I often end up saying sorry to people where, frankly, if I'd either kept my mouth shut or if I'd actually chosen better words, I wouldn't have been in that position. And I work hard at that, and I fail often. Usually when my adrenaline's pumping, notice I didn't say alcohol, it's not a booze thing at all. It's your adrenaline's pumping, you're full of it, you're driving forward, and someone says something and you give them you're not...
Yeah, I know.
You're not nasty to them.
No, I know, but it's people say it's a bit like picking on.
You put them down. And
have you spoken to my producer?
And am I nasty? No, but someone listening to this will probably say, well, you were with me the other day. And I wouldn't see it as nasty. I would see it as, well, you entered into the list.
It's a jape.
It was a jape, yes. And they'd say, well, I didn't see it like that. I thought you were horrible. And Pat would say to me sometimes, you weren't very nice with that person. Oh, come on, that was fine. No, it wasn't. because you thought it was all right. They didn't. And it's a bit like that cliche, which is a joke's only a joke if both sides get it.
Yes, of course.
And I think the same goes sometimes with my tongue. That's very deep and honest. A 5 to 3 on a Thursday afternoon.
It's part of the thing.
Yes, quite.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I wish we had so much longer. And I wish also BBC permitted us to have a glass of wine while we were on the radio as well, because I'd have the ice bucket out and something chilling. If you could leave us today, and I hope you'll come back at some point.
I'd love to.
You know,
if you had me, I'd love to.
I'd love to catch up with you again. So I hope this isn't the last time we get to do so.
I agree.
If you leave a legacy today, if there's one thing that you impart, something that's happened to you recently, or something for a business owner, or maybe someone who's struggling or whatever, if there's just one little thing that you wrap this afternoon up with, or you impart, what is that?
When I was 18, I was in the Royal Navy and I was on an exercise, and for a month we'd been training, and there was one guy in our little group training, and he wasn't very good, and 3 of us who were quite good teased him and didn't really bother. And on the night of the exercise, we had to do a certain thing in the sea, and he nearly drowned. In fact, he was very close to being killed. And they saved him, and he was fine. He had a happy ending. And the Fleet Chief Petty Officer, talking to this 18-year-old kid called Digby Jones, said, "You nearly killed him, because I've been watching you, and for the last month, you've been trying to show me how good you are. I knew you were good. I didn't want you to show me how good you are. I wanted you to show me how good you could make him be. I wanted you to make him feel so important in his own soul, so full of his own confidence, that he'd walk up this beach for you, lad. Because one day, you're the sort of person who's going to get people actually not to climb mountains and ford rivers, but die for you. That's what being in the Navy's about. And you failed. You failed because you spent a month showing off to me about how good you are. Will you, for once in your life, start trying to get people to feel how good they can be? And if you do this, and you get them up the beach and up the mountain, believe me, there's no way you won't succeed, because what you've got to do is make them feel $1 million. And I've never forgotten it. It's 42 years ago.
Gosh.
And I still, to this very day, can tell you the story, and in my mind's eye I can see him now, and his name was Michael. And all I'd say to you, the message today, whether you're a small business, whether you're in the public or private sector, whether you're in communications or sitting at home, I'd say to you, just remember that what you do with other people can change their lives for good and in a lovely way.
Digby Jones, put it there. Thank you very
Cheers.
much for coming in.
All the best to you.
That's been Lord Digby Jones. I'm Jonathan Lampon. I'll be back tomorrow from midday.